It was April the 14th, I believe, 1959. We lived in a two-story country frame home in a little community known as Daniels, West Virginia, outside of Beckley, the booming metropolis of Beckley, West Virginia. And it was routine for my grandmother to listen out for me while I took a nap. So my mother was going to her sister's house, who lived right up the road, to borrow a vacuum cleaner to do spring cleaning. So she put me down for my nap, and grandmother was just outside the front door on a porch swing, and she heard noise, came in the house, and the stairwell was blazing. There was an L-shaped staircase, and my bed sat in the corner of that staircase room. And there was a light bulb that hung down over the stairwell from that second story. And the theory was that it was an electrical fire that started in that light bulb, because that would have been why, it probably dropped and the stairwell just ignited. She could not get up the stairwell. So she came out of the house around a pathway up to the second floor, which was level with the main highway. And a young high school senior had pulled off the road, seen the smoke, pulled on off the road, met my grandmother at the front door, and she told him where I was. He came in the house, got me out. He took off his jacket, wrapped it around me, patted me, and had me up in his arms, carrying me to his car. I remember my head being on his thigh, and I remember looking up at the speedometer, and he was going 80 miles an hour. We got to the hospital. I remember cold scissors cutting clothes off and them wrapping me up, and I asked for a drink of water. And they gave me a drink, and I said, "Oh, can I have some more?" And they said no. And that was all I remember from being in the emergency department. I stayed 3 months. He would never accept any awards. They tried to give him Civitan awards, and he said no, that he had just done what any ordinary man would do. My cousin went to school with him, and they were having a high school reunion. So she asked me if I wanted to meet him, and I'm like, yes. All of my life I have wanted to meet him and to thank him for what he did. He saved my life. So I went to the reunion with her. She introduced us, and he asked to speak with me privately. So we went into an office and sat down. He sat behind his desk, and we chit-chatted, and then he just looked directly at me and said, "I never wanted to meet you." He said, "I can close my eyes and see you as you were that day." And then it just hit me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, what this young man had gone through. I just looked back at him and I said, "I hope you have a better vision now, because all of my life I have wanted to meet you and to thank you for what you did. You saved my life." In November of that year, I went to the Shriners Hospital. Back then, they were called the Shriners Hospitals for Crippled Children. And they had a plastic surgeon on staff at this hospital, so he agreed to do my work. So my first stint in the Shrine, I stayed 9 months. The worst was my face, but my hands and arms were what required the most work, because my arms were contracted and my hands were severely distorted. I don't have any end joints in my hands, and I have one little stiff finger and one little crooked finger, and my thumbs are normal, but I just have bits and pieces of nail beds in my fingers. My surgeon was very compassionate. He took me to the operating room every day to change my dressings. So there was this sterile environment, and I didn't suffer the pains of dressing changes until I got well enough to where they just started putting me in the whirlpool tub. The thing with burns is The treatment is just as bad as the burns because, they take your skin off wherever you have skin, and then you have scars from that. So you have scars from your burns and you have scars from the treatment. So I was a 50% third degree burn. I know that they have a rule of thumb in calculating cost. And it is that for every degree that you are burned, you will spend at least that many days in the burn unit. And I think it was last year when I checked with my burn unit, it was $10,000 a day. And that is a cost that has never been included in all the statistics you see from the United States Fire Administration. There's nothing about the cost of the survivor. I had to have scar releases done. I had to have more. It just is like it's never ending. And I mean, there's stuff now that I could have done, but I'm like, no, it's okay. So, in thinking about over the years of my life, I would say there's probably been $3 million spent on me. It's interesting to think about what is said and what is true. What is true is the cost of putting fire sprinklers in a new home build is 1% of the cost of the home. So, you spend 9 or 10% on your plumbing. You cannot put money value on a life or suffering. It's just not possible. I just have to keep pounding the pavement and the point. The point is we have the technology to prevent horrendous injuries like mine and these fire deaths that we have every year. I wound up in Bible college, and so I was in this new environment, and people were asking me all the time about what had happened to me. And during my years growing up, my mother and my grandmother had insisted that this tragedy had happened for a purpose. And so in being in this new environment with people asking me all the time about what had happened to me, it just began to eat at me. And I just didn't understand why this had happened to me. And I just became angry and bitter and hateful. So I was in my room one night, and my 3 roommates were gone, and I got out my syllabus for a prophetic books class. And so it was like, read the book of Jeremiah 3 times or something like that. I just got out my Bible, and I was reading through the book of Jeremiah, and I came to Jeremiah 18. And it says, the vessel that he was making was marred in the hand of the potter, so he remade it again as seemed good to him. And I wept and I sobbed, and I was like, I just wanted to take it all back. I wanted to take all my anger and bitterness back, because those words just jumped off the page to me. I knew that this tragedy had indeed happened for a purpose, because God had reshaped me and remade me, and it was fine, and I was going to be fine. As a burn survivor, I have family and friends that would say to me, I just don't even notice your scars anymore. And I'm just like, well, they're just always there. I don't ever not see them. You're just always kind of, hiding in, like the makeup, and you want them to go away, but they don't ever go away. People look at, you are either a victim or you're a thriver. I say that people sometimes are so fearful of sharing themselves with someone else, because they're so fearful of what people might think. If you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. But just the opposite is true. When you share yourself with other people, I just say there's just something magical, or you can call it spiritual, that happens where the hearer receives healing and you receive healing. It's just an unseen interaction that happens when you share your life with somebody else. You can't focus your life on the what ifs. I mean, you can think about it, but for me, it was like, this is my life. This is what it is. And this is what I have to do with what I'm going to do. Dr. James Holmes asked me to go with the American Burn Association to lobby with the American Burn Association, for some fire safety issue. And I was just like, what are you talking about? And he said, there's nothing you need to do to prepare. These folks have no idea what burn survivors go through, and you just need to tell them. I learned how to be an effective speaker, and then Common Voices was going to lobby on the Hill, and I was just like, what? And I said, oh, sure, yes, I've done that before. Yes, I'll come with you guys. Common Voices is a coalition determined to create a fire-safe America. It's interesting how we all come from different and diverse backgrounds. We all get along in this cause and purpose that we are fighting for. It's just, it's incredibly sweet to be with folks who have and know what you have been through and are willing to share themselves with you. It's just a matter of time until fire sprinklers are going to be required in all new home builds. It saves lives, it prevents injuries, and it is green. You don't have all the runoff of the chemicals and all of the synthetics and all of the toxic things that are in the house, go out into the soil. It's a proven fact that they save lives and prevent injury. People don't have the information. And I think that once people really listen, they get it. But then you have people who have their own agendas who are always going to have closed ears and closed eyes. Because unless it happens to you, it's not going to affect you. But this affects our nation, and it is a public health issue. It's just amazing to me that all of the federal buildings in this nation have fire sprinklers. Isn't that nice? They have to stay in fire sprinklered hotels. What about the people of the United States? It has to become about public safety. And that's how the Automobile Association, got backup cameras in all new vehicles. Far more children burned every year than are killed in back over deaths. But I don't know, that information is just not out there. And I think that, the fire service, when they're interviewed, that should be one of the first things out of their mouths. It shouldn't be at the end. It should be at the beginning. You don't want anybody to have to go through this type of injury. It affects every aspect of you. Physically, mentally, spiritually, psychologically. This injury is one of the worst injuries that you can ever experience. So it's just amazing how, these opportunities are just there. I've spoken, 4 times at the North Carolina Building Code Committee. And I pointed to every board member, just like this. And I said, you have the power in your hands today to save hundreds of lives in North Carolina. And they voted down fire sprinklers. I know that eventually ears will hear and eyes will see, because one of those people on that committee, it'll happen to them. It'll happen to somebody they know. We've had some success with Congress in getting, a bill passed that's going to let small businesses retrofit. I just think we just have to stick to our guns and just be patient and be persistent. It's that important. It's that important. It's about public safety.